All right, thanks everybody for joining us for our regular council meeting for the city of Courtenay on April 11th, 2022. And just a call to order that we respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. And we appreciate all the work that they do. And we'll actually be talking about some of the stuff they do later on today. And I just want to take a moment just to recognize that all of us on council today are and staff are wearing the yellow daffodil for the Canadian Cancer Society Daffodil campaign. The daffodil is a symbol of strength, courage, and hope. And this campaign supports and remembers those affected by cancer. So I just want to recognize that. And if you need more information, you can go to www.cancer.ca for more information. With that, we'll go into adoption of minutes. Excellent. And we'll assume that's adoptions for both the meetings on March 28th. And are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, minutes will be adopted unanimously. Any introduction of late items? I haven't had anybody wave at me furiously, so we'll assume there's none of those. And delegations, very excited about our delegation today. I believe it is our MLA, Rona Ray Leonard.
Thank you, Mayor Wells. I appreciate the opportunity to come here and present to you. I do apologize for having to be virtual. It's a good thing and a bad thing, I suppose. I'm here today and I'm really thankful to have this opportunity to present today on meeting the challenges in our community, particularly on our streets and in our woods, as homelessness and other concurrent life trials continue to be a challenge. And I want to start by expressing my gratitude for this council's leadership. You have been a very willing partner, and I thank you also for your advocacy. There are just so many things that you've done, from providing land for rapid response, supportive housing, from providing shower space when COVID hit us, space for the warming program, just the liaison work that you do, the heart that you bring to every communication that we have and every relationship that you build. And you also work really hard with the Downtown Business Improvement Association, and you've really encompassed the whole gamut here. And I particularly want to express my gratitude that you're taking up the baton with the $1.1 million Strengthening Communities grant, which is part of a jointly funded federal provincial restart program. And I just know I'm very confident that you will run with that baton and successfully serve our most vulnerable. I also want to express gratitude to the service providers in this community. They work tirelessly to house people, to provide the supports and services that seem endlessly stretched too thin. And every day just seems to be more of a challenge. But I also want to celebrate some of their successes too. I think the one that most recently that I would like us to remember is the Transition Society's Street Buddies program, where it's making a difference in people's lives and also in our community. I just want to say that this has been some challenging times, and I have been very keen to explore some of the ways that we can do more as a province. And I was reaching out earlier this year to housing, mental health and substance use, municipal affairs, and public safety, and Solicitor General. And I was prompted by some of the conversations that I was having in community and hearing stories about, for instance, the number of police visits that to the hospital every year, and the between mental health visits that saw that where people were seeing to go into decline without service and it not being dealt with. And I learned that last year, Courtney's Community Safety and Wellbeing Index was high enough to be a priority community that could benefit from a thing called a situation table. And I spoke with the Assistant Deputy Minister, Wayne Rideout, and the Acting Director and from the Office of Crime Reduction and Organized Crime, Brian Sim. And I also spoke with Ali Bajwa, who's here today and has been very kind to come up here to share with you and with our RCMP and our mental health and substance use representative about a situation table and how it may benefit this community. And so I'd like to introduce to you Ali Bajwa.
Thank you, Rona, for the introduction. My name is Ali Bajwa. I'm a senior policy analyst with the Office of Crime Reduction and Gang Outreach with the Policing and Security Branch. My team's mandate is overseeing the situation table portfolio. Firstly, I'd like to thank you all for having me here. And I'd like to present to you on the model and how this could benefit the community. And I'd also like to acknowledge that I work from Vancouver, which is on the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh people. Thank you. So we'll begin our presentation today about the situation tables. See if we can keep the clip going. Perfect. So I'm from the Office of Crime Reduction and Gang Outreach. We were initially a collaboration between the RCMP E Division, the Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit, and we were housed in the E Division RCMP headquarters for the last 2 years. We have a very close nexus with our policing partners. Situation tables in British Columbia. So what I'm here to talk about today is what is a table, what are tables, who sits on a table, who participates on these tables, where they are, and who do these tables serve, and how we support the establishment of these tables. In terms of table, I'd like to emphasize before we begin, the point is it's simply a meeting. It's not a new agency. It's not a department that we set up. It's a collaborative meeting of multidisciplinary partners, frontline service providers from across the community. So government partners, local authorities, health authority, police services, First Nations, and community-based organizations that meet weekly or bi-weekly for 60 to 90 minutes to discuss in specific situations of individuals who are at risk of experiencing harm or offending or criminal offending behavior. If they do not receive any intervention or support from the partners in the community. The partners then share limited personal information about vulnerable individuals and families on the table, and then they design and deliver in-person interventions, door knock, based on consent to these individuals. Who participates on a table? So on average, there are 14 to 15 service providers that sit on a table. You can see it's a very busy slide. I'll sort of go through it. So the common partners are mental health, addictions, police, education, income assistance, housing, health. We also nonprofit partners, NGOs, First Nations agencies are also present on the table. In terms of geographic distribution, so situation tables are a mandate letter commitment for the minister. They are spread across British Columbia. We have at present 15 tables that are active. We have 13 tables that are being piloted. End of last fiscal, we just funded 4 communities, 2 on the island. We funded a situation table on Victoria, Port Alberni, and then 1 in Merritt and Houston. In total, by the end of fiscal, we expect to have around 30 situation tables operational. We do have a guaranteed base budget funding to support the expansion of this model. Who does these situation tables serve? So that's the key and the most important part of today's presentation. So we can see on this slide, you have 4 acutely elevated risk indicators. So significant community interest at stake, probability of harm occurring to an individual, significant intensity of harm, and multidisciplinary nature of elevated risk. Essentially, AER refers to situations where individuals or families facing a composite level of risk factors spanning across multiple human service agencies and where there's a high probability of harm occurring soon, so within 24 to 48 hours. The four filter process is essentially the triage process that the table participants follow in order to determine if AER is present, and if so, move to the four filter intervention. Partners refer clients to the table based on this criteria. So you have agencies, policing partners, all discussing cases on the table. Based on this criteria, they can bring a case, an individual's case, to the table for discussion among the larger group. One of the key things that we like to stress that our agencies and partners are really concerned about is information sharing. We are working on an integrated program agreement that would allows table members to share information within the existing privacy frameworks. So when we support a table, when we fund a table, we'll provide a template for the integrated program agreement that every partner on the table signs, allows them to share information using the four filter method. And it is still a consent-based method after the door knock occurs. I'd like to give you an example of a sample discussion just to illustrate how that would look like on a table. An example that I use is a woman with a history of being reported missing to the police. Police had previously intervened in a suicide attempt. She had a past history of alcohol and drug abuse. She was known to be associating with negative peers, and police were recently called to a home by a neighbor as a result of a disturbance with suspicion of domestic violence. So the cops, they brought this case to the table. The table members agreed, based on the risk factors outlined above, that this situation merits a discussion on the table. So they sat together, they searched their databases, whether they had interacted with this individual previously. They identified, based on the risk factors, which agencies should be responsible and involved in the response. They did a door knock, and were able to decrease the risk level associated with this individual's case. So that's just an illustration of how a table case would work. One of the things that we do from the province's side is collect risk factors through a risk tracking database that we provide to our partners. We'll collect information on the age cohorts, age ranges from 25 to 30, 30 to 35, the risk factors. So there's over 100 risk factors across British Columbia that we track, from alcohol, housing, drug abuse, mental health. It's a vast variety of factors that our partners look at and then we track. We also look at which was the originating agency, so who brought the case to the table. We look at who took the lead on the case. For example, if RCMP is bringing a case to the table, they are the originating agency. But if a social worker from NCFT responds, they're the lead agency. So we're looking at where the cases are being brought from and who's taking over the case and who's assisting in the cases, and the lowering of the risk factors. The reason we do this is to establish trends in a community, build evidence of where the community needs are, where the major risk factors are, and essentially provide a comparison for the city and do a province-wide analysis. I'll give you an example. This is from a 2020 RTD statistics, risk tracking statistics. So on tables across British Columbia in 2019-2020, there were 302 discussions. For every individual, there were average number of 11 risk factors. So every case that was brought to a table, they had an average of 11 risk factors, whether it be housing, mental health, alcohol, drug abuse, domestic violence. It's a wide range. And then on average, 5 agencies from the communities on the table were involved in planning an intervention and carrying out the intervention. So if the RCMP brings a case to the table, they aren't the ones responding to it. It's 5 agencies responding together. It's a collaborative intervention. The most common age group referred to a table range from 30 to 39. The 2 most important statistics for us: 61.4% of the discussions that resulted in overall low risk of the client that was brought to the table. So that's a very high success rate. The second most important factor is 71% of the cases were transferred from police to a more suitable agency. So if police is bringing a case to the table and our policing bodies are burdened with high caseloads, it's somebody else taking the lead, so their caseload is decreasing. So across the province, we have seen more appropriate, more efficient services being provided by service providers based on situation tables discussions. And it essentially helps scope in the mandate of all our partners. Overall benefits: improved collaboration among service providers, improved service delivery. So not only does it improve collaboration, it makes it more efficient. So if you know the local service providers, they're all connected, they discuss a case on the table, it's a more efficient, a better service delivery for that individual who's living at risk. You are able to identify systemic barriers. So through the risk tracking database, through the collection of all that data, you understand where the issues are, where the systemic issues are, and what are the systemic challenges your community is facing. Another major benefit is the reduced demand for emergency and police services. Again, as the evidence shows, a lot of the caseload is taken away from the police as the lead agency to another agency. That doesn't mean the police and the RCMP or the officers aren't involved in the response. It just means they aren't the lead. So they might assist in an intervention, but they wouldn't be taking the main load. Reduces risk of criminal offending and victimization. And awareness of complex community challenges and shared responsibilities. So the big picture improvement is service providers sitting together, understanding the shared responsibility of offering services to these individuals living with a lot of risk factors. In terms of provincial support, so the province of BC provides a seed startup grant to support the establishment of the table. The grant goes towards training table partners on how to share information using the 4-filter process. It also provides the money can be used to support administrative staff, such as buying a laptop, booking a meeting room, supporting these meetings that the service providers have. We also run a community of practice of all situation table leads, chairs, and co-chairs across British Columbia. What that allows is it allows service providers in one community to share information, share their knowledge, their learnings across service providers from all of British Columbia. So we have situation table leads from each community talking about their tables, their cases, how they responded to it, what are the challenges they're facing. So service providers get this opportunity to learn off each other, bounce ideas off each other, and just increases knowledge sharing. We also provide, as we said, we collate the information using a risk tracking database. We provide access to a SharePoint site where we provide analytical summaries of the community, and we provide comparisons with the province in general. So you can see what the risk factors in your community are, what are the major trends, lead agencies, and then you can compare that across province, how other communities similar to your size responding to it. And that's the model in general and our support for it. In terms of next steps, and if Courtney is interested in setting up a situation table, the municipality, we expect the municipality to take the lead in it. They put in a grant application. With the grant application, we ask for letters of support. So the more the letters of support the application gets from council members, from service providers, lead agencies, the better the chance for the community to get a table. And then once that grant is given out, we help coordinate the training. We connect you to the training providers, and then they take it on from there. Thank you. I'm happy to take as many questions as you have. I have also listed my contact information there. Feel free to send me an email, call me. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that presentation. And just while I'm waiting for people to think of questions, I've got a few off the top of my head. And really, I think this is kind of really reminds me back in the mid-90s when restorative justice was getting off. This looks really similar in terms of the supports, and then really that data to figure out, are you doing it right? Working with other agencies. So really, happy to see that again. I think our restorative justice organization and processes in the Valley is amazing. So I really like to see that. And I think, the fact that, and I think you said this several times, that although the RCMP may be involved, not being the lead agency, but still being there for support when needed. I think those are just absolutely critical. So with that, I'm going to go over to Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks so much. This is really interesting. It's an encouraging next step that we can try to take, hopefully, if we receive the support we'd be looking for. I had a question about, you said letters of support are helpful. Are there other factors that are useful in sort of getting towards positive results on the grant application beyond that?
Oh, I'll just get your mic back. You can leave your mic on now and
Perfect.
yeah.
Thank you for the question. So we do have a very detailed grant application form. We look at, why from the community, we ask, why do you need it? What are the main issues that your community is facing? So, if you have challenges around unhoused population, responding to crisis situations. So we there's a whole segment where you can actually have a narrative form explanation of why your community needs it. That goes into it in addition to the letters of support.
Thanks. We have a follow-up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks very much. I guess I was wondering if the sort of data that comes out of these tables, is that used to determine future supports of other kinds, like complex care housing and other things that we've been repeatedly looking for? And I'm hoping that this process might be able to support us in that effort.
So I have the perfect example for that. The city of Surrey leveraged the risk tracking data from the risk tracking database actually to ask for more funding support for housing in their community, and they were successful. This was a few years back. So essentially that's our goal. Allowing the city to see the larger issues, the larger trends by looking at these cases, looking at these risk factors, even if it's a few cases. There you can look at the major risk factors, right? You have 7 discussions on the table. All of them have a risk factor of housing. That means that's the major concern that your community is facing. So that can be leveraged.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. I may have other questions, but I'll let others take the floor for now.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton. That's great. And next we've got Councillor Cullen.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks so much for the presentation and taking the time to come in person today and inform us about this possibility. I certainly see that these situation tables could really help us in our response to a lot of the issues that we're grappling with in our community. I did just have a question, well, I guess 2, but they're somewhat related. You mentioned that you wanted, or that it was a requirement that the municipality take the lead. Is that just on the grant application, or after, should our community be successful, how would the situation table be managed with that?
So the funding goes directly to the municipality. So the municipality takes the funding, but it's not responsible for running the table. So the way the model's set up, once the service providers are brought together, they're trained by community partners on running the table themselves. So, municipalities can allocate an individual to sit on the table, like a bylaw officer, services, a clerk for meeting notes and stuff, but it's not necessary. The way the model's set up, the way the service providers are trained is essentially to organize that meeting, meet for 60 to 90 minutes, discuss a case, and if there's somebody they need to deal with, they take that offline and develop an intervention.
Great, that sounds like a logical approach. And I suppose my follow-up to that is, at what stage are we engaging with our community partners and the outreach organizations that are doing a lot of this work currently? I would be hesitant to proceed without hearing that they are wanting to engage in this and have the capacity. I mean, committing staff time to 60 to 90 minutes a week is an ask, especially for a group of organizations to come together. So I'm just wondering how other communities are approaching that.
So in our outreach in my role, I do the outreach. I present to different partners in the community. I've done that across BC. We present to service providers, convince them of the role, give them examples of other communities where service providers have participated. We did a presentation today with the RCMP, showed them, give them an insight into what this model could look like, how it could work. Same with Island Health. And so we do that initial outreach. But again, once the city is convinced, once our major champions are convinced, other partners we have seen across BC join and they sort of participate. So what we need is, if there's buy-in from the top, we've seen service providers benefit from it. So if there's no hold up from the top, the service providers in the community generally benefit from it. They're interested in participating on the table.
Great, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum and Councillor Morin. And sorry, I turned your mic off. That's why I had to have you put it back on.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much for the presentation. Really happy to see so many communities that seem to be having some benefits from this. I know we don't have a lot of time to go into details, but I'd be really curious as to the nuts and bolts of how these, the 61.4% overall risk lowered, like what the actual actions that took place to create that outcome. I guess I'm wondering about those systemic barriers that you spoke about. I think it's easy to identify the risks and where they come from, and what might be a logical solution for those. And oftentimes it is services and restriction of hours, not having different models that accommodate folks. So I guess I'm curious how those things have been alleviated. As an example, with the case study you provided, someone like that might need addiction services that are in the evening, as an example, or they may need outreach or all these other things. And we don't really have a mechanism to be able to change those systems. So that's what I'm curious about, how these outcomes come about without being able to really accommodate some of those needs. Thanks.
Absolutely. So one thing I think I should mention is what a situation table does is complements existing initiatives. It enhances existing service providers, it enhances the efficiency in the way they deliver services. It supplements what's already on the ground. There's service providers are doing a tremendous job with limited capacity. What situation tables do by offering this collaborative approach to service provision is create more time, create more space where they can attend to other clients, maybe attend to their core duties more. I think that's the way we view situation tables, is they'll alleviate some of the capacity concerns across service providers, whether it's RCMP, whether it's nonprofits, allowing them to be more within the time they have.
Almost like a rap song starting there. Yeah. Do you have a follow-up? Yeah.
I guess, and I'm thinking about the criminal aspect as well. We often hear from the RCMP that we have the same folks, kind of prolific offenses or offenders. And oftentimes those are related to mental health and addiction, and they keep coming back because they're not really getting the help that they need. And I know that oftentimes folks who are in the criminal justice system will say, could you get me into detox? Could you get me here? Could you? And there's no mechanism for that. So I guess those are some of the things that I'm struggling with, figuring out how those things go into place so that people are not on this sort of revolving door situation. Thanks.
Absolutely. So reoffending behavior, that's a very valid concern. What a situation table could perhaps do in that situation, I'll illustrate an example. There triggers an individual that leads them to a crisis. So if a situation table discussion could prevent that trigger before happening, so it's preventive. I think that's the key. We want to make sure that we move away from enforcement, move away from criminalizing behavior, and offer appropriate timely services. I think the key is timely. So if there's a repeat offender, and they are in a situation, they have those risk factors, that could trigger a situation where lead them down to a path of reoffending, where they end up with the police custody. An appropriate intervention at the right time, a timely intervention, can prevent that behavior.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Morin, for that. And yeah, I think timeliness is certainly one of the key things that we hear time and time again. Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. I'm not sure if it's something that we should be pleased about, that our community has achieved a crime index that makes us eligible for this program. But nonetheless, a continual issue in all of human services and community agencies, and in the work that the organizations like ourselves do in the social and justice area, is bringing all the parties together to come up with a collaborative approach, which always works better than if people are working on their own. It's a continuous source of challenge to do that. And if you've been involved in the field for a number of years, as I have, you've seen all sorts of initiatives at the agency, community, and the provincial level to try and make these sorts of coordinated and collaborative services function more effectively. What my experience teaches me relates to Councillor McCollum's earlier point that all the people involved are very busy, and the work to collaborate and coordinate with other agencies actually takes time and resources. And so I'm curious about what sort of funding is actually available if there is an administrative person who is given the challenge of coordinating this, or if the expectation is that some existing community agency is going to carry that extra administrative burden.
So part of the thing, thank you for the question. Part of this, the seed funding, the startup grant deals with training. There is a portion that deals exactly to support administrative costs. So it's, booking meeting rooms, providing a laptop. It is. So the training, in total, the startup grant is for $35,000. $25,000 of it goes towards training, and the rest is for administration and for running the table.
And when you say administration for running the table, who does that? Are they given money so that they can actually hire additional staff to take on these chores?
Traditionally, in other communities, it's somebody from the municipality, a clerk that's responsible for organizing the meetings and taking minutes. Sometimes they have bylaw officers sit on the tables just for that purpose.
Yeah, well, so what that says to me is that we take already busy people and we give them extra work, and the compensation doesn't actually address what it would take to bring in extra staff resources. So I have a problem with that. I'm not saying that it's not an initiative that's worthy of support, but I really think the resource implications are something that we need to send a message to the province about. We've already been speaking to the province about the fact that we can't cope with the resources that we have to deal with the situations that we're facing in the community related to the very issues that these tables would be looking at. And we need additional core funding to the agencies that are equipped to deal with those issues, so that we're not putting bylaw staff and other city staff into situations where they're having to scramble to manage these types of concerns. So I think if we do support this initiative, we need to put a proviso on it where we in fact ask the province to provide additional resources so that we can actually build in the capacity to do the work. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian, and really the buzzword of downloading of costs is certainly something that I appreciate you bringing up. And with presentations, delegations, normally we don't necessarily do something on the same day, but it would be potentially something that if we ask for a staff report, that could be one of the questions. What would actually be the cost implications to the city? Because I think everyone would probably agree that there's a benefit. It's really just dealing with that cost side. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Ali. Great presentation. I guess I had the same concern as Councillor Hillian, but I'll just follow up with asking if the grant is sort of a one-time grant or if it would be ongoing and year over year.
So the startup grant is a one-time grant, but we are cognizant of the fact that there's a lot of staff turnover in community. So if there's staff turnover and they require retraining, we also offer retraining grants. So we essentially would provide a retraining grant next year if the staff turnover to again train the newer staff on the table model.
Yeah, and is there like an ongoing budget, I guess, for these situation tables?
The province has mandated expansion of the model. But for communities, it's a one-time grant with additional retraining grants if needed.
Okay, thanks very much.
Excellent. And with that, I think we may be exhausted of questions. I'm going to look in Councillor Cole Hamilton's direction. He thought he might have some more. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just wondering if MLA Leonard wanted to respond at all to the questions and comments that have been made.
Certainly. Are you inviting me to speak again?
Absolutely. The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for hearing us out. Ali Bajwa is pretty good at explaining what the situation table is. I think that one of the challenges that I'm hearing is recognizing what I'll tell you, that when I first heard about them, I was like, this just sounds like another layer of bureaucracy. We're already doing things in a collaborative fashion in the community. But I got convinced that this is it comes at a whole different level, where it goes beyond the agencies meeting together and doing things together, and to focus really very much on specific cases, and that it isn't an additional workload. There's an administrative burden, absolutely, to organize a meeting and provide meeting space, but there is no expectation for local governments to actually be doing any of the on the ground work. That it's an opportunity to, I'm going to say, create some synergies around making best use of everybody's particular skill sets and mandates, and an opportunity to make things better than they are right now, because we do know that there are challenges. And the last thing that I wanted to add was that as Councillor Cole Hamilton said earlier, this is an opportunity to gather not only anecdotal information, but real-time information that will be shared with the community, to help really focus in on what we need in terms of things like housing and supports and complex care. Yeah. So I just want to thank you again for your insightful questions. You're doing more than your due diligence, I'd say, in making sure that you're looking after the people of Courtenay as always. And I just thank you for being open to the situation table as a possible solution to some of the challenges that we have. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Rana Ray. Really appreciate that. And Ali as well. Great presentation. I think we've had some really good questions. I think maybe one thing is the timing of applications, whether there's an actual timing component to it. And then something that seems somewhat obvious to me, but just given the fact that we're just Courtenay, whether or not we'd want to have letters of support from the regional district, town of Comox, village of Cumberland, et cetera, just to make sure it's a community-wide side. So I can put your mic back on, Ali, if you want to. There we go.
Thank you. So we take applications year round, so there's no specific hard cutoff date. But obviously the earlier the better, because you're higher up in the queue. So we get to process that first. In terms of your second question, sorry, could you repeat that?
So one was the timing, and I didn't articulate as well, like if you apply, how long it takes to get processed and get in, and then whether or not letters of support from other municipalities.
So the letters of support from the community and service providers are key. There'll be more than enough for us to support funding the table. In terms of how long it takes to process, if you submit a grant, let's say next week, it'll take a couple of weeks for us to process the grant. After that, it's the connection with the trainers, and you get in a queue with the trainers. And now currently they have 5 communities in queue. As soon as they're done with them, they'll start with Courtenay.
Okay. Yeah. And I just know, like, looking just at this year with the election coming up and the tax, it's not an actual tax, but it's going to be taxing on the staff who are going to be doing double duty as part of their regular jobs. So, but I think it's certainly, like I said, when we look at other initiatives like the restorative justice program, but in terms of those kinds of things, the funding model is a little bit different. So excellent. Well, this will be coming back to council in the future. So again, thanks so much for your presentation today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Next on the agenda is appointment of a chief financial officer and signing authority amendment. somebody would like to, Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, Mayor, happy to move this. I'll move that council appoint Mr. Adam Langemeyer as Chief Financial Officer in accordance with Section 149 of the Community Charter and the officer's designation and establishment of powers, duties, and responsibilities by law number 3000/2020, effective April 11th, 2022. And that council rescind all previous banking, investment, and financial transaction signing authority appointments and appoint the following individuals and positions of the city as signing authority for the city in regard to all banking, investment, and financial transactions. And those are Mayor Wells, councillors Cole Hamilton, Frisch, Hillian, McCollum, Moran, and Theo, CAO Jeff Garbett, as well as Adam Langemeyer, obviously Kate O'Connell, Renata Waika, Annie Berard, Adriana Proton, and Rayon Matthews.
All right. I don't think we know. I'm going to pass it over to our CAO, Jeff Garbett.
Thank you. Through Mayor and Council.
We have done.
Thanks. We'll get to voting on the motions in a second. I just wanted to.
We want to keep them as nervous as possible.
I'm sorry. I want to just acknowledge Ms. Renata Waika. She has done a very admirable job with a vacancy with our Director of Financial Services. And I just want to also thank the entire financial services team who really carried quite a large burden as we had revisioned a little bit our financial planning process. But I just wanted to say a very much big thank you to Renata, who spent many extra hours in that role, and to welcome Mr. Langemeyer to our team. And we have recommendations for you on page 30 of the agenda.
Excellent. And it's been moved and seconded, but I would like just to add to Mr. Garbett's kind words that my 7 years of being on council, this was by far the best financial planning year by far, leaps and bounds. So again, just huge kudos to staff, not just for having the numbers in front of us, but having great discussion and great workshops so that we could understand things in a better way and make the best decisions possible. So I think that's, again, gone off quite well. And with that, maybe we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Oh, look at that. The next one is tax rates. So Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Thanks, Mayor. So I'd like to move that based on the April 11th, 2022 staff report, 2022 tax rates report, council approve a residential tax rate class of 2.4019 and a commercial tax rate multiplier of 4.20 in order to generate property tax revenues to fund the budgeted expenditures identified in the 2022 to 2026 consolidated financial plan.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. And again, back over to Mr. Garvin.
Thank you. Ms. Berard is on the Zoom link today, and I think she has a few comments that she'd like to make in support of the recommendations.
All right. Hi there.
Hi, Annie.
So through the CEO, Mayor, and to Council and to Mayor and Council, so based on the 2022 revised rural values provided by the BC assessment, staff recommend increasing the tax multiplier from 3.5 to 4.2 in 2022 in order to provide a similar increase for the average residential property and commercial property, and to maintain the tax burden between classes similar to prior year level. I'm open to any question here. I know there was a bit of information provided in the report. I don't know if there's any clarification needed.
We do have some questions. So first we have Councillor Frisch.
Oh, thanks very much. And when I was reading through the report, I was kind of wondering about the increase in assets. It was noted that, you know, in total, I guess the value had gone up 30 some odd % on the residential side. But I was wondering if we had sort of an approximate value of the new parcels are on the roll over the last year. And I'm sorry if that information isn't easily available too. We could just get it another time.
No, I don't have that information on hand, but I can get back to you though.
Yeah, always curious as we're growing so fast. I wonder how quickly that value is increasing compared to the expenses and services we're providing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. I did meet with Adam earlier today, and one of the things he brought up was the tax density map, which is another potential tool, especially as we grow and map out how we're growing. So I just want to thank him for mentioning that today and look forward to that as a potential thing. I don't expect it today, but at some point, maybe we'll have further discussions around that type of planning as we move forward. Back to you, Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention something else that I know that others have heard about and talked about around the table, but wanted to bring it up today. And that's the idea of having perhaps a different tax rate for those people that are doing business in our downtown, as we have a great value there and a great community asset. And we want to perhaps give them sort of that added incentive to continue building business in our downtown core and looking for ways to do that. So just want to put that out there. I know that this multiplier can be a fairly large burden for small businesses. And in some way that the idea of having a different tax category for those in downtown might help with that. So thanks.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Councillor Frisch. And yeah, I remember conversations around commercial tax rates and how I think our hands are relatively tied, but I know that we've made some headway or some movement at the province to try to see how those things can be affected. So thanks for bringing that up. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. And that's certainly been an initiative that Courtenay Council has taken up numerous times to try and challenge the fact that all commercial taxpayers are taxed at the same amount. So you have large banks and large businesses that basically pay the same percentages as small mom and pop operations. And I don't believe we've had any success getting that changed. But my question was more specifically about some of the tables that are included with the staff report, which I think we need a little bit of help to translate, in particular the table on page 46, which shows the impact of change in the commercial tax multiplier for an average property. And I'm curious where the 6% figure that's highlighted comes from, and how that then changes into the 4.96% that is our expenditure increase.
I can speak to this. So basically, we ran the different scenarios for the different tax multiplier in the very first column on the left. So we adjusted our tax rate with those different scenarios, and that led to different increase from 2021. Actually, it's always for an average residential property and for an average commercial property. So again, we just take the total divided by the number of properties provided in the revised roll from BC Assessment, which is, it's the overall average. It's not the median, which would probably be more representative. However, we don't have that information readily available. So the 6% would be an increase for that similar average residential property. And at the top here, the table you have, so that property would have been valued at $476,000 in 2021, and now would have been valued at $628,000 in 2023. And so keeping those value in mind, that would a 4.2 multiplier would represent a 6% increase. From 2021 tax bill for the municipal portion, obviously, of the tax notice. And the similar tax multiplier of 4.2 would represent a 6% increase for an average commercial property. I don't know.
I guess the thing that confuses me, apart from the sound system here, is we're not talking about a 6% increase to our residential taxes. So, and I realize that there's probably a simple explanation that escapes me here, but
well, there's different things that make the difference. So we also have to, and I remember providing some explanation when we were discussing the tax increase of 4.96% that was approved by council earlier in March. So there's a couple things that I've identified there. One is, so we're only looking here at the residential class and the commercial class, but there's other classes that are also changing. And one is the recreation, I believe, recreation and nonprofit that also that reduced from 2021 to 2022, so that they will see a decrease in their tax notice, and that needs to be kind of redistributed amongst the residential and commercial. And again, we're looking at the average, the overall average, and not per se the median for the different classes, which would probably be more realistic when we look at the total increase year over year.
Did that help clarify?
I would have to provide perhaps a table with all the classes with the increase from 2021 to 2022. That's maybe something that is missing in this report. It would be easier to reference because there's a significant decrease in the assessed value for one of the classes, and that makes that reduction needs to be redistributed to the other classes.
Okay. I understand the basic concept of the multiplier and the attempt to make the increases equitable, and that if we lower the commercial rate, that we end up increasing the residential rate, which is generally something that we don't like to do, because the theory behind the multiplier is that businesses have the ability to pass on their costs. And I know businesses will tell us that that ability is limited under many circumstances, but they do have that ability, as opposed to homeowners who don't for the most part. So I get that. I guess I'm just not very good at reading these tables, and maybe I'll turn it over to Councillor McCollum, who has a much better head for these things than I do.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian, and Councillor McCollum. You're going to explain it to the rest of us. No pressure.
No, but I did get a head start because I did email this question back in March to Annie. So I had some time to mull it over. So yeah, it does make a little more sense that the two classes that we're looking at in this table have increased, but there are other classes that we're not seeing that are part of the calculation that went down. I think that's basically what Annie said. Anyway, that is not my question, although I was going to ask it again just for clarity, but it's already been answered, so thank you. The question that I had was around the growth in these asset classes. We've had a lot of residential development in the last couple of years, and I would think that proportionally we've had less commercial properties added to our assessment roll. And I'm just wondering if you have any numbers around that you can provide. I'm just thinking about the proportion of taxes that we leverage from commercial versus residential, and if we are looking at more commercial properties in our community, or sorry, more residential properties in our community paying into our operations versus a smaller percentage of commercial, that can help with the decision making around the multiplier and just the proportion of our revenue that we're looking to receive from commercial property payers or commercial properties.
Well, I don't have all the detail, the ins and outs. We have a reduction of one property on the commercial side, and Renata explained to me a little bit, and in some instance, and we have that good example, just across the street from City Hall, we have that lot that was, I think it was 3 different roles, and that was combined into 1 role. So it's kind of biased a little bit when we look at the number of properties, because sometimes it could be just 1 lot or 3 lots, but really it's just 1 altogether. So that explains probably why we went down 1 commercial properties. I don't know what makes that -1. It might be a couple more, a few less, but again, it could be just the matter of combining different roles or subdivision of a role, and same thing for the residential too. We have a plus 140 properties for residentials, but again, it could be sometimes subdivision, and that also includes the vacant lot. So if a vacant lot is there's a house on the lot, I mean, it's not a plus overall, it's just from a vacant lot to a residential property. So it's all together in the same class. And I don't have the detail of how many were combined, how many were subdivided, how many were, I don't have that information. And I could probably dig and find it out.
Okay, and Mr. Garbutt has a comment.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor McCollum, the growth in those asset classes, we'll provide council with some information on that. The deliberations that we have in front of us today have a balance between the significant assessment growth in our residential properties, combine that with the commercial, because those variable rates are applied there. That's why the structure, this conversation and report has been historically structured that way. And just in talking to Mr. Langemeier, working with Next Council and doing our introductory sessions, we're going to talk about some of these things and guiding principles for our future financial planning. I'm really confident that we're going to build on the work that we've done previously in this regard.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, overall, I think there's a lot of great information here, and it's a lot to kind of pare down into a few tables. There's a lot of moving pieces. My question around the growth in or the reduction in commercial wasn't so much around the number of commercial properties identified, but whether or not we're seeing a growth in value that's not associated with the increase in the market, like renovations or property improvements and that kind of thing. I know that BC Assessment does provide those numbers when they come and present to us. So I thought you might have them handy, but thanks for answering my questions.
All right, yeah, thanks very much. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I think that there continues to be confusion in the community about how the assessment and the significant increase that we've seen, which is quite staggering in many cases, impacts people's taxes. And I think it would be useful if staff could lay that out in this open context, so that it's basically on the record for people who may be worried that because their assessment has gone up by 30%, that means their taxes are going to be impacted in a similar way. So I'd appreciate it if staff could, once again, for the record, provide that context, please.
Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. Through Mayor to Council, we will have an updated tax notice. This is the age-old question that we have each and every year, and I'll defer to financial staff to give us a quick overview. But we heard very clearly that the tax insert that we get from people will explain and unpack this situation, that their assessment is not directly related to the proportion of taxes that they pay. I'm not sure, Annie or Renata or would you like to tackle the question from council, please?
Sure. I mean, that information is, we usually provide that every year on our website. We have, well, just like we provided in the report, that attachment for the impact for an average residential property, that information is always published on our website. And we have different, I think there's a little video there that explain how the increase in assets value, what the impact is on the tax notice. So it brings on the average increase in value versus a specific increase for a specific property. I think that's clearly laid out, and that was also brought. I mean, that's going to come later in the council meeting, but that came up a few times in our public inquiries. What the impact is versus for those who had a more significant increase in asset value, what the impact is on the tax notice, what the impact will be on the tax notice, and there's been some information already communicated to the public on this. And again, there will be more available on our website, and this will be also included on our tax insert provided with the tax notice at the end of May.
All right. Thanks, Councillor Hillian. And Councillor Moore.
Great, thanks, Mayor. I think just following up on Councillor Hillian's request, I know that our communications department does a good job of spreading that information across all of our platforms. I think social media would be really important to put it on our Facebook page. There's been quite a lot of chit chat over the last couple months. Actually, there was a city councillor from another community who provided, I thought, an excellent explanation to her constituents, and I actually copied and pasted it, and I could see that the conversation really changed once that accurate information was out. That people were saying, "Oh, thank you, thanks for explaining it," because I think it is all Greek. Well, I don't know, all difficult to wade through sometimes. So if we could just make sure that it goes through our social media as well as our website, I think that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Moore, and I appreciate that. I'm sure staff have heard that comment, and will come back with some suggestions or just operationalize it as best they can. Well, that being said, we have a motion on the floor. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. All right, next we have municipal policing contract. Councillor Frisch. Oh. Yes, Councillor Frisch. Sorry.
Okay, no, I'm ready if you are.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll move that council approve, that council grant final approval of the 2022-23 municipal policing contract expenditure cap of $7,387,099, of which Courtney is responsible for 90% or $6,694,027, and that the established number of members for Courtney to be set at is 31.4.
Okay, it's been moved in second, and I'll pass it over to Mr. Garvin.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. In June of 2021, Council provided approval in principle for the 2022-2023 RCMP municipal policing expenditure cap of $6.831,280 million. Approval in principle is required each year in order for the RCMP to obtain Federal Treasury Board oversight with 10% contract funding by that deadline of June 15th of 2021. Given the information that's been presented through our financial planning program, Council is now requested to provide final approval for the restated expenditure cap for the policing contract year. This expenditure cap includes the discussions previously, as well as assumed vacancy pattern of 2 members. As discussed during our financial plan and later in this council agenda on the approval of the financial plan bylaw, policing represents a significant portion of our budget, and ongoing support and service contracts are designed to continue to provide that level of service in our community. It's anticipated that through the next two financial planning cycles, we'll be working with the RCMP to review policing and service levels. Inspector Curvers has given us a brief look at sort of where they're going with their population growth and some of the challenges that we're experiencing, as well as some of Council's priorities, potentially around community policing, et cetera. I think we're going to have a robust discussion in that regard. The staff recommendation is on page 49 of the agenda, and Ms. Vajka is here for some questions. She's the author of this report.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And Councillor Hillian.
Oh, sorry, Mayor. Could I
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Frisch, you were already
Maybe
on.
I'll just jump
Yeah,
in real quick.
Yeah.
I was just curious where the extra money comes from. I don't know if that was in the report or not, but because we only approved so much, I guess, in our planning process, we planned on this extra 600. Is that correct?
Thank you through the CAO to Mayor and Council. So through the financial planning process, we have budgeted these extra funds to cover the expenses. We had a pretty good idea in August of last year that the policing expenses are going to be increasing, and we adequately budgeted through the financial planning process to fund the extra $500,000.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And then I guess there in the report, it also mentioned that the cost was actually going up by maybe $1 million, but half of that was taken care of by someone else. Or am I missing something there? It seemed like it was a much larger number and that we only had to cover a portion of the increases for labor, I think is what it was.
So I guess there's a couple components to the cost. There's the actual contract, the annual contract, plus we have severance that are going to be paid out over a period of time for total of about $270,000, which we have accrued for in the past. And there is also the retro pay, which is invoice that is coming. Originally, we thought that retro invoice is going to be about 1.8 million. From the latest communication that we received at the end of February, I believe it was on February 28th, the estimate is that the invoice will be 1.2 million. We have not actually received the invoice, but again, we have set the money aside to cover that retro invoice that's coming from RCMP.
Thank you for that.
And possibly where it's coming from, there's been communication from FCM that FCM is pushing for the federal government to cover some of those costs, just because for a lot of communities, it's going to be staggering if they haven't been preparing for it. So, but yeah, I think it's really well worth noting the fact that I believe our policing costs went up by 10%. By large, our largest driver, cost driver for tax increases this year. Councillor Hillian, I've already turned on your mic, so I'll give it back over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I wonder if staff could just elaborate further on this issue, because again, it's a matter of public information that our policing costs have gone up significantly. As you've noticed, the largest driver of our budget increase. And much of that involves unionization of the RCMP and pay increases and such. But we have some suggestion that there may be some relief coming from the federal government. As you've noted, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities is directly lobbying for that. And I'm just wondering what it sounds like finance staff have provided a contingency. But what is the implication for us if in fact that relief does in fact come, and does it have any impact on this budget increase?
And Mr. Garbett wants to make a comment. Let me try that again.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Through the mayor to Councillor Hillian. In the event that this does happen through the federal government, we would be coming back and understanding and discussing that with council. We would hold those monies in reserve and then do some strategizing, because as I said, there's going to be upcoming asks likely on the policing front. Some communities have looked to develop almost a protective services reserve that can be utilized to address community issues, whether they're fire, policing, by law enforcement, et cetera. And had some discussions with Mr. Langemeyer and Ms. Vika about some of those opportunities just the other day. So I could say that given the financial pressures at the federal level, the likelihood of them stepping in to pay this is unknown at this period. We have fairly significant federal expenditures related to COVID, et cetera, across the province. So I know that there's a strong lobby for the federal government to do this, but I would just thank previous financial services staff with that have that foresight to start to put this money away, as we were aware that at some point it was going to land the retroactive pay for our CMP and partners in policing. But I guess long-winded answer, we would look to do some financial planning on how to strategize to best use those resources.
Thanks. And I'll also just state that I certainly welcome ongoing conversation with regards to policing services and community policing concepts. I know that we have significant numbers of people in the community who would like to see some changes in our policing model, particularly as it relates to dealing with people with mental health issues. And I know the police would like to see some changes in that regard as well. A very difficult area for them to work in. And while we may not be able to make much of a move in that direction with our current constraints, I think the further conversation is of benefit to the community. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. And Councillor Morin.
Thanks. I was just curious if a miracle did happen and we did receive some funds from the federal government, where it would go. And it sounds like it would go in to reserves. And it's my understanding that there is a national police review that's scheduled or something. Does anyone have information on that? We heard about it recently at the LGLA conference, that there's something coming up in the next little while. That's a national review. Maybe nobody knows. Thanks.
I'll look for some information. We can report back to council. It's likely in our Friday email correspondence. Thanks.
All right. Thanks very much. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm not sure if it's what Councillor Moore is referring to, but there is a review underway of the Provincial Police Act. And I haven't heard about anything at the federal level.
Okay, well, Mr. Garbutt will see if staff are able to dig something up for us. I mean, one conversation that is rekindled at the leaders' lunches that we have is about an actual new policing station, and so that's something that is going to be a conversation with the province as well as we move forward. So, but obviously, at this point, we're just dealing with this year's budget, but there are these other pressures that are happening in our community in terms of even the space that the RCMP is in. They've been well beyond capacity for at least the last 20 or more years. So with that being said, I think we've had a great conversation. Again, public safety is, actually features quite strongly in our budget from the policing side, and also our new fire truck that will be coming in. So with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that is unanimous. And that brings us down to the Mile of Flowers. And Councillor Moore.
Yeah, I'll move this, Mayor. I'll move that based on the April 11th, 2022 staff report, 2022 Mile of Flowers program, council approves option 1 and directs staff to proceed with a public volunteer community plant-in compliant with all WorkSafe BC regulations and relevant provincial health officer requirements that may be in place at the time of the program schedule.
It's been moved and seconded. And do staff want to speak to this? Mr. Garbutt?
Mr. Shaw's joined us in the meeting, and I think he's going to do a short discussion.
Yes, thank you. Through the CEO to Mayor and Council, I'm pleased to present the staff report 2022 Mile of Flowers program. The purpose of this report is to present Council with options regarding the delivery of the Mile of Flowers program for 2022. As we know, the Mile is a very highly visible and very involved initiative requiring a great deal of staff time, both in the preparation of the program's rollout, but also for the ongoing maintenance throughout the summer months. Unfortunately, unforeseen safety challenges surrounding COVID-19 resulted in the cancellation of the Mile of Flowers program in 2020 and a staff-only installation in 2021. However, staff believe that a resumption of the program for 2022 is possible. Therefore, it is recommended that staff be directed to proceed with a public volunteer community plant-in with all WorkSafe regulations and relevant PHO requirements in place at the time. A little bit of deja vu. I think we had this conversation last year on April 6th, 2021, when we knew that the world in front of us was changing, and I believe the world is changing again today. But I'm confident in this recommendation and that staff are able to pivot if if the requirement were to arise of staff to provide alternative means for this delivery. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And it has been kind of nice seeing all the flowers popping up around City Hall and around town so far. So really appreciate this coming forward. With that, I have Councillor Morin.
Yeah, just very quickly, Mayor, I just wanted to say I'm really happy to see this come back. We did receive quite a bit of feedback. It's one of those things that makes our community unique. I don't think there's other communities that do this. And, you know, many families and organizations have done this for years together. It's quite a tradition. So I'm happy to see it come back, even if it is missing the barbecue, but maybe neighborhoods can have their own neighborhood barbecue after they plant together. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks. And Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'm certain that there's many people in our community who are very much looking forward to participating in this event after its hiatus. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing some beautification along Cliff Ave. I did have a question. It was kind of raised recently by a constituent just around whether or not this type of planting creates more resource demand for the city than, say, a comparable garden that uses perennial planting. And I'm just wondering if you could comment on the maintenance side of this and whether or not it requires more watering or more city services than if we had perennials that were growing along Cliff instead of this type of planting.
That's a great question. Thank you. Through CAO to Mayor and Council. In short, from a cost perspective, from the acquisition of flowers, if we were to do a perennial, we'd see a one-time cost, likely a reduction in overall value of expenditure. However, the maintenance cost in perpetuity for staff to water or for irrigation systems to be installed or run would be equivalent regardless of the type of a flower or perennial plant that was installed. So there'd be a slight reduction if we were to move to a perennial type of planting on a year-over-year basis. But we also step away from potentially the large community involvement and the historics that this event offers for the community.
Yeah, agreed. There's definitely value in that. I wasn't suggesting that we should go with it, but I think it is useful for, I think the criticism is that it's so labor intensive with annuals and that they're only good for one season. But I think it's important to point out that regardless of the type of landscaping we have in place, there's maintenance and service costs associated with that. So thanks for your answer.
All right, thanks, Councilor McCollum. And I don't see any further questions, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And next we have the UBCM Asset Management Planning Grant. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, I'll move that council direct staff to submit an application for grant funding for the Courtenay Asset Management Plan project through the May 2022 intake of the UBCM Asset Management Planning Program and endorse support for the proposed Courtenay Asset Management Plan project.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded, and I'll pass it over to Mr. Garbutt.
Thanks. Through Mayor and Council, Mr. Shaw is going to give an overview of this report.
Yes, thank you. Through the CAO to Mayor and Council, I'm pleased to present staff report UBCM Asset Management Planning Grant Application. The purpose of this report is for Council to provide approval for staff to submit an application for grant funding through the UBCM Asset Management Planning Program. To date, the city has made significant progress in its asset management journey. However, expertise and aid to effectively move the asset management plan further down the road and down the path into the implementation stage is necessary. I'll slow down a bit. The focus is now shifting towards long-term financial planning and the development of sustainable service delivery models. The plan that's presented here today, or the objective of the application, is to receive funding to support that initiative and work collaboratively with Council to determine what those strategic initiatives and service models will be. The idea behind this in particular is to allow us to utilize third-party entities to provide those services and provide a bit of relief for our financial team who otherwise would have been taxed with aiding in the public services delivery of this program. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks very much. And I don't see any questions so far, but I think asset management obviously is top of most of our minds as we look at making sure that we're making the best use of the infrastructure that we have, and we're replacing it, maintaining it, all those kinds of things. And so with that, I'll just call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thanks very much for the report. And we'll just assume we'll get the money. So that's great. Next, we've got a request for funding from Kuskusum. Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move the motion and then speak to it if that works.
Absolutely.
I move that council provide a $10,000 grant to the Comox Valley Project Watershed Society to support an options paper to explore designs for public engagement and access at the Kuskusum site, and that the grant be paid from the city's host gaming funds account under the other council initiatives and projects distribution category. So, Mr. Mayor, both council members and staff and our citizens will have seen the phenomenal amount of work that's been going on at the Kuskusum site as all of the concrete and asphalt is removed. The piling wall, the sheet piling wall has been exposed, and planting has actually just taken place this past couple of weeks to plant native shrubs, and the first planting in the corner of the site adjacent to the bridge. But as council knows, we have a liaison committee that involves the Comox First Nation, the society, and the city. And one of the tasks that is before us just now is to determine what this site will actually look like when it's completed in terms of opportunities for public engagement. And there's obviously a lot of options available, and there are questions. For example, will there be a fence along the site as there is now? Will there be any trails? Will there be any parking? Will people be able to walk on the site or not? And this is something that will be primary for Comox First Nation, which will be the eventual sole owner of the site. And of course, we're very mindful that the original goal of this entire project was to, as much as possible, restore this site to its pre-contact state, and to create the habitat that supports our salmon and our wildlife and such. So there are many questions that are involved, and the idea is to develop an options paper prepared by consultants with expertise in this field that will give us the options for the discussion that needs to take place, so that those various decisions down the road can be made. The proposal is that it comes from the council initiatives in the gaming fund account, and that also is in keeping with the fact that as much as possible we try and use gaming dollars for projects and services that benefit the entire community, given the origin of those funds, and also the fact that it isn't an increased burden on our individual taxpayers if it comes from the gaming account. So I'm hoping that council will support this motion and allow this amazing project to carry on as we all hope to see. Thank you.
So thanks very much for that, Councillor Hillian. And yeah, I mean, the fact that this is a one-time thing really just to help set this off in the right direction, I think makes great sense. I don't see any further questions or comments. So with that, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Okay, next we have the Courtenay Fire Department annual report. And Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Chief McDonald is with us. He's going to give an overview of the annual activities of the Courtenay Fire Department. I just wanted to start with an introduction, just saying thank you very much for the volunteer citizens of the Comox Valley that provide this invaluable resource and support for the community. When the fire bell rings and they all get out of bed and head to the fire scene or accident or medical emergency, we all benefit from their service. And I just wanted to just extend our thanks at a staff level to all of those volunteers and as well as our full-time staff in the Courtenay Fire Department. So over to you, Chief McDonald.
Thank you very much. And through the CAO to Mayor and Council, I would like to thank you all for the opportunity to present the 2021 annual report for the Courtenay Fire Department. The purpose of this report is to provide Council and the public a summary of fire department activities over the course of 2021. The Courtenay Fire Department responded to 1,053 incidents in the city of Courtenay and our fire protection districts, with extreme weather events throughout the year generating higher than normal calls for service in comparison to years past. Motor vehicle incidents, fire alarm activations, medical responses, downed hydro lines, open burning complaints, and structure-related calls were the ones that we responded to the most in 2021. But we also did find that responses to urban-related issues such as campfires and dumpster fires in the downtown core increased significantly, particularly in the colder months of November and December. Changes to the COVID-19 public health orders allowed us to conduct our fire inspections at pre-pandemic levels, with our staff conducting over 1,700 fire inspections in the city and again, the fire protection districts. Most of these areas were found to be free of any major fire code or life safety violations, so we were very happy with that. These changes in the public health orders also allowed us to run our firefighter training program at pre-pandemic levels, and our members invested over 3,300 training hours on subjects such as fire suppression, auto extrication, rope rescue, and self-rescue techniques. Along with the extreme weather events that we experienced here, obviously there were some major wildfires throughout the province, and our department participated in 2 of them, one at Deca Lake and another at Douglas Lake, and our crews were deployed for approximately 20 days. During their deployments, our crews extinguished hot spots in residential areas. They removed fuel loads from homes that had been evacuated, scouted fire activity in the hills, and supported the BC Fire Service in their attempts to divert the fires around populated areas. From a personnel standpoint, we obviously had Fire Chief Don Bordonix and Deputy Fire Chief Dennis Hendrickson retire from active service. We also had 7 volunteers leave our organization in 2021. Reasons for leaving including just retirements, changes in employment, which required them to leave the community, or family commitments. For us, it represented a 13% turnover rate, which is a little higher than usual, but that said, it's still below the Canadian average, which runs anywhere between 15 and 20%, depending on what publication you're looking at. In closing, I'd like to thank Mayor, Council for their support of the fire department. And I would like to echo the CAO's comments about our appreciation for the hard work and dedication that our volunteer firefighters have shown, both our organization and the city of Courtenay, in what was an extremely busy year. Open up the floor to questions.
All right, thanks so much, Chief McDonald. Really appreciate the report. And I do have a question. From Councillor Theos. I was like, that number's not on my list, but you're sitting one seat closer to Councillor Moore, and then I thought that might happen. Yeah. All right, Councillor Theos, over to you.
Thanks, Chief McDonald, for the update, and thanks for everything you and your team does. That number of 13% turnover rate and the seven people that had been part of that 13%. Were you able to replace all 7 with new recruits?
Absolutely. That is one thing that we were able to. I mean, it was tricky, obviously, with the public health orders and the way that we were able to deliver training, but we definitely were able to maintain a good complement of trained up volunteers to fill the spots. At no time were we below our 50 active firefighters. And so much so that even right now, we are just about through another recruit class, and we'll have another 9 ready to go as soon as positions are available.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, Kurt. You do.
All right, and you did such a great job on your presentation today that I don't see any other questions. But you know, and I think I mentioned it earlier on that I think we're all excited about the new fire truck that'll be coming. I mean, everyone gets excited about a fire truck, I think, but really grateful for the amazing work that the volunteers do, and really look forward to getting back to doing appreciation dinners and other events for them to show them that appreciation as best we can. So with that, I'll everybody, I guess we did a receipt. So all those in favor of receipt, and that's everyone. It's unanimous. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And thanks again, Chief McDowell. You have yourself a great night.
Thanks, you too.
And with that, we'll move into reports and updates from council, and Councillor Cole Hamilton was your.
I was need to move to the next staff report. So.
Oh, do you have anything you'd like to talk about? You are first on the list. Okay. Councillor Frisch, Councillor Hillian, Councillor McCollum, Councillor Morin, Councillor Theos. Councillor Theos, look at that. He's jumping in both feet.
Yeah. I did attend a library board meeting this past Saturday, a few days ago, and predominantly the biggest issue for sure is continuing to be the ongoing strike, and we're hopeful that there can be some movement over the next little while, but I will say that the gap has closed. But as again, the critical importance of the outcome of this for everybody in our community, I will I'll continue to stay on it and keep the council updated if we hear any movement towards finding a successful approval of that. So.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that, Councillor Theos. And I'm going to talk about a few things, and I'm actually almost everything I think on my list. I'm actually going to look to fellow councillors. Oh, Councillor Hillian, maybe I'll let you jump in because you may have grabbed some of these.
No, Mayor, I actually had a question for Councillor Theos, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
We have had some questions from the public with regards to this dispute, and I'm wondering if you can confirm that bargaining is actually going on. There was some suggestion that the library board was not at the bargaining table in some of the correspondence we received.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hillian, for the question. And of course, during any negotiations, it's challenging to really talk about details of what's occurring. So that could give the perception that the bargaining isn't ongoing. But just to reassure the council that that bargaining is ongoing, and that the bargaining team from our side with the executive is always open to continual discussions, and seeing that there is a constant conversation that is available. So that is ongoing, Councillor Hillian. So
yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
All right, thanks for that. All right, starting last week, there was a meeting for the OCP official city plan with developers, and many councillors attended. I think the majority of council was actually at that meeting. And it was a great discussion, not just for staff to talk about the OCP, but there were some really good constructive suggestions from the development community. And so I think that's one of the great things about this OCP program as we moved through updating it, that staff have really worked as hard as possible, very diligently, and have been successful in getting lots of feedback from our community. Next, I attended 888 Wing for the Respect program outlay here in the Comox Valley and across Canada. And it's basically an online repository that works to organize services for people that are first responders. So, basically people that run towards danger while everybody else is running away. And so that could be things such as counseling services and various things like that. And they actually had the Operation Service Pause that was actually there showing how they were training dogs to become service dogs. And that's a local organization which will be having their grand opening shortly. And also like the Military Family Resource Center was also there. Also attended the North Island College Spring Celebration, which basically was the end of classes. So students and faculty alike were celebrating, and that was great to see a lot of the lead faculty there, as well as students enjoying burgers. Also met with folks at the Courtney Museum and was able to check out the new Baby E exhibit. So if you haven't seen the one that Pat Trask had found, I highly recommend going in there and taking a look at it. And just a reminder that Courtney is actually, well, I should say Courtney, but yeah, we'll say Courtney has been designated through the Elasmosaur as the fossil of BC. So we won it a while ago, and I think our MLA is gone now, but I will be pushing our MLA again to get that announcement official. But again, just one of the interesting things, last spring break was the busiest that they've ever seen. And that's a sentiment I've heard from many businesses, is that like the rebound right now does seem to be fairly intense. People are enjoying it. But again, getting those staffing up. And then lastly, a tour of McPhee Meadows, again, with most of council and staff, and as well as Comox First Nation, and really just get a sense of what that could be, but really looking to Comox First Nation and making sure that part of that process. But with that, I think we're going to move on into first and second readings. Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So I will move that based on the April 11th, 2022 staff report, zoning amendment bylaw number 3044, 1915 Cumberland Road, council approve option 1 and proceed to first and second readings of zoning amendment bylaw number 3044 and 2022, and the council direct staff to schedule it and advertise a statutory public hearing with respect to the above referenced bylaw.
The final reading be withheld pending the registration. Yeah. So mine does have that final reading of the bylaw be withheld pending the registration of a section 219 covenant. So, okay, Mr. Garvin.
Thank you, through Mayor and Council. So that option is that option would be coming in front of council. Sorry, that aspect to the recommendation would come back to council following public hearing. But for clarification, the staff recommendation is pending public hearing and deliberations that the final adoption be withheld pursuant to the covenant registration. There's a significant number of items in there relative to infrastructure, et cetera, as well as amenities that would be included. Mr. Marshall has a short overview, I believe, of this report as well.
And so for today, we don't have to worry about that final reading of the bylaw be withheld.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Mr. Garvin.
Thank you. We should include that condition in first and second introduction. So okay. The motion would be the same as that on page 81. Councillor Cole Hamilton read the second that staff be directed to schedule and advertise a statutory public hearing with respect to the above referenced bylaw, and that final reading of the bylaw be withheld pending the registration of a section 219 covenant.
So Councillor Kalama, maybe if you just want to read that last sentence.
Yes, thank you. I was reading from the recommendation at the beginning of the report rather than the one on page 81. So, and that final reading of the bylaw be withheld pending the registration of a section 219 covenant.
And then that had already been seconded, but we'll resecond it if that's all right. And is everybody clear on what the motion is on that page? Everyone's up to speed? Perfect. All right. Excellent. Back to staff. Mr. Marshall. And you look great, but you're muted, so I can't hear a whole lot.
Sorry.
There we go.
Through to Mayor and Council, this is a rezoning application for 1915 Cumberland Road. It's a 3-acre site, and it has an existing single-family home on the site. If you look at figure 2 on page 25 or 75 of your agenda, you'll see the view of the property from Cumberland Road. The lot is presently vacant, but it does have one single family home, but other than that, it's vacant and is treed and has areas of it that are wet seasonally. So we're looking to rezone the subject property from the R1A to the residential R1E to allow for 21 strata lot subdivision that is supported by a common house where daycare and community events can be held. The new zoning will allow for infill development with small lots with modest homes. The lots will range in size from low of 300 meters squared, which is about 3,220 square feet, to over 450 square meters to allow for secondary suites. So there's a number of them that have that are above the 450 square meters to allow the suites. 3 lots will access Cumberland Road through a single driveway with easements, and the rest of the lots will access via Larson Road. So if you look at figure 4 on page 75 for the revised access and lot layout, there was an issue around the ability to access Cumberland Road because this particular access is too close to the neighboring intersection. And so there was some debate around having bollards that could be taken down for emergency access or different mechanisms to allow emergency access only, but staff were concerned that those could be overridden. So a new layout was created, and that's the one that just shows the 3 lots sort of facing onto Cumberland Road, and those 3 lots will all share a driveway. So there's one access for those 3 lots onto Cumberland Road, and then the remainder of the lots will go back towards Larson. So in order to get the access through Larson Road, a seasonal wet area had to be moved and improved to a new pond area on the west side of the Strata Road. So this was given approval through the ministry for this new sort of pond amphibian sort of habitat. So this is actually an improvement over the wetland that was there previously. It has been relocated to allow the access to go through the area that was wet seasonally, but it is an improvement to that type of ecosystem. So the Arden Corridor Local Area Plan, the official community plan designation is urban. And so this provides, suggests that this type of infill, small lot infill, is what we're looking to achieve in this area. The proposed development is close to schools, amenities, public transit, and is a good kind of a unique style of home that we haven't really seen recently in Courtenay. It's certainly not affordable in the sense that it's single family homes, but it is much smaller lots than we've seen in the past, 3,300 square meters. So that will necessarily mean that the houses will be more modest and smaller. So it meets the criteria for infill and does provide a different form of affordability. The community amenity contribution, so the recognizing the city's commitment to affordable housing, the applicant has put forward 2 options for their contribution to affordable housing. The first option is a $100,000 contribution to the Affordable Housing Amenity Reserve Fund. The second option is to provide 1 lot with a $90,000 reduction in its sale price, with a covenant to ensure that reduced value of the home or price of the home is carried on indefinitely. Staff are not recommending the second option. They're recommending the first option, primarily because that $100,000 can be used. It's a more flexible form of contribution. It allows us to leverage, other grants and things for other projects, and will allow for that money to be put towards more affordable housing. As I said, single family housing is, even at a $90,000 reduction in the fee, is still not, technically affordable. So there's a number of conditions that are tied to the rezoning application. There's the Strata Road that the applicant will need to construct a sewer main as per our sewer master plan beneath the Strata Road. So this will connect the sewer from Larson Road to Cumberland. The applicant will be required to provide cash in lieu of off-site works along Cumberland, and this includes the improvements to the bicycle network. So rather than doing the necessary off-site works on the right-of-way, just having one piece, they put the money towards that for the future work that's going to happen in that area. And the application the applicant sent around a 4-page package to 124 addresses in the area. They did get some feedback in relation to the drainage from the site and traffic from the site. The applicant has addressed those concerns in the sort of attachment at the back end of the report. The wetland that they're proposing there will contain the drainage on site and match the pre-development versus the post-development. So with that, staff are recommending that this particular application get first and second reading, and that those conditions be fulfilled prior to the final reading of the bylaw. Open to questions.
All right, thanks very much for the presentation, and that has generated a couple of questions, starting with Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation, Chris. I have a few questions, so maybe I'll just go a couple and I can take a break. But I guess the first thought was about the watershed or the water there, and if there's any connection to Piercy Creek, and if there's been any talk with the Piercy Millard watershed stewards in relation to that. Wondering if that's sort of been looked at. Trying to think, there is a tributary that runs up towards the Krebs Larson area, but I don't know that it runs through that property, so I'm not 100% sure.
This property does not have any existing creeks or ditches or anything on it. The land, the areas that that were wet sort of seasonally, so they would dry up in the summer and spring and fall, and so they might be wet for a certain portion of the year, but they're certainly not ongoing streams or creeks.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know the water generally flows sort of around the corner and out a different way towards Cumberland Road, but that's fine. I don't know if maybe the watershed stewards will come forward later on in the process with thoughts or not. The other question I had was about strata versus freehold. I mean, I understand is it 3 lots or 6 lots that would be freehold? I think it's 6.
There's 3. There's the 3. There's been 2 different. There was 2 different layouts. So the one layout had 3 lots on the Larson Road cul-de-sac that were freehold, and but the lots on the 3 lots on Cumberland that face onto Cumberland, that will be a strata driveway or street to access those 3 lots, and the remainder of the road up to Larson cul-de-sac will be a strata road.
Okay, I understand that, and I guess I'm wondering with the difference, what's holding this development back from just being all freehold? I assume that there's some restraints about the size of the road in order to fit the lots in. Maybe there's other thoughts, and I wonder if staff have any thoughts on which is a better model in the end. Obviously, we're going to make the best we can with this situation, but also looking forward, is there any benefits to having the roadway as a city-owned road in the long run?
So starting with the strata side of it, a strata road is a lesser standard than the city standard. But that being said, it can be a reduced width, which is good in terms of drainage. You're getting less drainage on the site. It's cheaper, so that will make the whole development be cheaper because you're not putting in the same kinds of infrastructure, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, 12-meter wide paved surface that goes along with the city standard. So there are some environmental and financial benefits to the strata road. The danger in strata roads is that they are shared. The cost of the maintenance of those roads are shared. And so if 20 years from now, the road's all broken up and there's problems with it, then the residents tend to, they're faced with a huge bill to replace the road. They could come to the city and say, look, we pay taxes too. How come we have to pay for this rebuilding of this road? So that's the long-term danger in strata roads, is sometimes the residents aren't wanting or willing to continue paying for the ongoing maintenance of that road, and they come to council to get it turned into a city maintained and run road. And then the city would have to bring it up to a city standard, and so it would be quite expensive.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. And I know there are some other issues that come up with stratas. They often are concerned about the division of their water metering. They obviously pay for their own snow removal and storm drain maintenance and so on. And from a public side, obviously there can be some implications for transportation and through fare. And I guess if I can be allowed one more quick one, I wonder if, public access will be allowed through there for people that want to walk or cycle or whatnot.
Yeah, there has been access proposed through, there won't be road access or car access through to Cumberland, but there is pedestrian access through to Cumberland. So that strata road will be open to the public and right through to Cumberland Road.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Frisch and Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and then thanks for the presentation, Chris. And I see a lot to like about this development proposal. Many positive features, including sort of compact development, the common house, which will have a possibility of shared childcare and shared meals in the community, fruit trees on the property. and creating a wetland. And my understanding is that the Millard PRC Water Stewards actually did provide an email of support saying they had no concerns at all and actually appreciate the fact that a seasonal wetland, which would support amphibian life, would be arriving there. All in all, I see this is the kind of development we do want to be supporting in town, and I appreciate the proponents putting forth more than the minimum required for the affordable housing amenity. It's a substantial contribution, $100,000. So that they stepping up to support other members of the community is greatly appreciated. And looking at the couple of responses that came back, there seemed to be no large concerns raised, or a couple of questions about traffic, but I think that was premised upon the idea that this be a through road, and that's obviously not going to be the case. So I think that largely addresses that. And 1% had a concern about water runoff, and of course, as we discussed, it's that the pond there is going to address that with the support of local stream keepers. So the only question I had was just with the change of the configuration of the driveway, or the sort of the road that goes through it. Does that have any bearing on the traffic sort of sightlines report by Watt, which was included at the end? And another traffic related question, one of the responses talked about it being perhaps desirable to have a four-way stop at Larson and Krebs. And I was wondering, as at the entrance to the development, is that something that will be considered as this development moves forward, if it does?
I'm not aware that that intersection, being proposed. So if anybody else knows, feel free to jump in. And the sightlines, that traffic report did identify, and I don't think it matters what the type of access, whether it's the 3 lots or thoroughfare. They were saying the sightlines were good in both directions for that particular access.
All right, thanks so much, Councillor Cole-Hamilton. And next we have Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Cole-Hamilton, for outlining some of the things I was going to say around, particularly around the Millard PRC watershed folks actually saying they think the wildlife pond would be an excellent addition. So it's always great when our conservation groups are supportive of these. I was curious about the public hearing and wondering whether this would fit for the circumstances of waiving. I'm not suggesting necessarily that we do that, but I just wanted a refresher on that, just because at this point it does seem like there's not too much opposition and quite a few positives. Thanks.
And Mr. Garbutt wants to just make a quick comment.
Thank you, through Mayor, to Councillor Moore, and thank you for that question. We talked about those statutory changes, and I think until such time as, for a development of this size that we've developed that approach, I think we would continue to utilize the public hearing as a default. But I really appreciate you raising that, because these are the types of situations where the due diligence that's happened would suggest potentially that we could consider waiving the public hearing. I think benefits to that include both timing as well as a message to the development community that this is the kind of approach that we want to see. So prior, until we come forward with that policy discussion, I think staff in the planning department will look for opportunities. But this has been in the wire in the queue for a little while. So we I think feedback like that from council will allow staff to do some more deliberations in that regard. Thank you.
Yeah, Paula.
So just to be clear, this one wouldn't necessarily be one of those that we would consider.
Thank you. In response to Councillor Moore, it definitely would be. This is the kind of infill and densification where the public process prior would suggest that could be a step. When we're talking about some of these statutory changes, Chris had talked a little bit about that to the developers group at the OCP. Some aspects of our existing engagement with the community it needs potentially to be looked at, but in this case, that is the type of application that could very well be there.
Yeah, I really appreciate your comment around sending a message. For me, I didn't see really any downside to this development. In fact, it ticked off a lot of boxes. And of course, I'm particularly impressed with the plan to have 10, or actually an orchard, not just a couple fruit trees, but an orchard I saw in the plan. So hopefully that comes to fruition. So I'm not sure how we would go about waiving that. I'm a little cheeky. I had a good weekend. So yeah, maybe we can look at the possibility of maybe waiving the public hearing for this one. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Moore, and Councillor Councillor Hillian. It is Councillor
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure if this has been covered, but there was one piece of feedback from a nearby resident about whether this development would limit their development opportunities. And I'm just wondering if staff could respond to that. And then I'll have one other question.
If I remember correctly, it was the neighbor to the south, or I guess on the other side of the pond. The drainage pond, is that the neighbor you're talking about?
It's on page 92, I believe, of the of our agenda. And
sorry, and I should also note, I forgot to mention that the applicants are on the Zoom meeting here. So that might be a question that they'd be able to answer and have already dealt with. So that's another option.
Yeah, fair enough. I actually like the public hearing process and with regards to these types of developments, because I think it does give people in the surrounding community the opportunity to come out and speak. And so my other question actually relates to our process and whether or not we are still looking at an online public hearing, or are we moving to a hybrid model, or are we doing it fully in person? Has that been determined as yet?
Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connell is just going to approach the mic.
Ms. O'Connell.
Through your worship, thanks, Councillor Hillian. We are continuing with the virtual public hearings. The feedback we had from the public and the engagement on the virtual was significantly positive. So for now, we will continue with the virtual public hearings. We are going to be engaging in a community strategy throughout this year, and we'll be able to gather further feedback and information as to whether or not there's a great desire to return to a hybrid or in-person model. But in addition to being able to participate via Zoom, people can also use the call-in model, which has been very well received by our public as well. So for now, and until we go through that communication or otherwise directed, we'll continue with the virtual model.
Great, thanks. I'm happy to support this going forward to public hearing. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian and Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, we've had some good discussion here, so I'll keep my comments brief. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that I really like the aspect of the proposal that includes a community space for the strata residents. I think providing these types of community spaces in developments like this encourage people to consider living in a smaller space when there is somewhere to go to host a gathering or connect with your neighbor. So I really like that aspect of it. And I think it actually highlights one of the advantages to doing a strata development is that there's the opportunity to put amenities like this in that we couldn't consider with a normal freehold subdivision. And then the other question, or the one question I had, was picking up on a point that Councillor Frisch made around access through the development. I recognize that the plan as it is right now does allow for people to ride bikes through there or walk through it. But just thinking of other strata developments, particularly one that's at the top of my street, you could theoretically connect to green space and a greenway and a park, but there's a locked gate. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that would prevent future strata councils from deciding to put up a fence or block access for people coming through Cumberland Road should one day some residents living along that access decide that they don't really like the traffic past the side of their houses. And if we have a way of ensuring that that continues to exist.
That's a good question. It's certainly not the intention of the applicants to do that. In fact, they're quite community minded and have shown that they want this to be a community amenity for the neighbors and the city as a whole. But there's no guaranteeing what happens in the future. It is, when it's a strata road, it is private. It is a communally owned road. And if they decided to close off that access, then technically that would be permitted. That'd be their choice.
If I may, through Mayor and Council to Councilor McCollum, following the public hearing, this question around public access, this approving officer and or staff as a condition of rezoning could include in that section 219 public access requirement, reciprocal access agreement for pedestrians. I would assume that likely the strata, the proponent for the development would likely want it to be pedestrian and cycling access. You've highlighted one of the challenges with stratas, and other communities have had to tackle this on Vancouver Island. Stratas have taken steps to block public access. So through this rezoning, as it's a discretionary approval, we can include conditions that ensure public access. And ultimately, the trade-off here for a private strata road that has a lower environmental footprint as well, there's some consideration that can be given there. And I think that's probably a matter that would likely come up through the public hearing and people's questions about that.
Great, thanks for that answer.
Excellent. And Councillor Theos.
Thanks, Mayor. Hi, Chris. I was curious that, this is one of the few areas in the community where there's larger lots in the area. There's a few what appear to be the 1+ acre, and this one's a 3 acre. Are all the lots in that area, or are there any other lots in that area that are zoned other than R1 currently? Do you know?
I believe the lot to the neighboring lot is also got the same zoning and has a similar opportunity. But I'm not familiar with all the lots in the surrounding area. Okay. The majority of the lots have in the surroundings have smaller lot, single family type uses.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
All right, and looks like we're done. Thanks so much, Chris, for a lot of information, and Mr. Garbutt as well. Here I'll just turn Councillor Theos's mic off. There we go. All right. That being said, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously, and we'll move forward. Next, we've got the. Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. I'm sorry, don't mean to be a little bit out of order. Just to clarify the question around waiving the public hearing. When you waive a public hearing, that has to be a part of the notice that's been given with first and second. So in this case, staff didn't really anticipate that because we hadn't quite got to that yet. We'll definitely be in a position to take advantage of that in the near future. Staff are going to, given the completeness of the application, we're going to arrange to get this public hearing as quick as possible. But just for clarification, had we had the inclination to waive the public hearing, that would have happened prior to first. So thanks for clear. We're building the plane a little bit as we're moving along. And that you council may recall that's when we've been doing that relative to the secondary suites in some parts of town. So thanks for that. I appreciate your ability. Let me jump in there.
No, I appreciate that, Mr. Garbutt. And it might even be an opportunity for a lunch and learn or something, just in terms of when it's appropriate or not, and making sure we're all on the same page. Councillor Frisch.
Oh, I was just going to move forward. Okay, I'll move that council give first, second, and third. Can we do all three at once? First and second reading to the 2022-2026 Consolidated Financial Plan bylaw number 3060/2022.
All right, all three, it's been seconded. And with that, did staff want to speak to the financial plan? Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I thought we were talking about the zoning application. Lots on the go. Ms. Vika is here for questions, as is Ms. Berard. And just given the detail and deliberations we've had, as well as the public engagement, staff are recommending, our recommendation is on page 114 of the agenda.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And I think it's probably worth noting, I believe there was 4 or 5 responses sent in regarding this. So not a huge amount of community was excited about it, but I thought it was a great read myself. So I want to thank staff for all the great work. And again, I think it does garner reiterating the fact that the budget planning process this session has been outstanding. So I just really want to recognize all the staff that have been involved and getting us to where we are right now. I don't actually see anybody asking questions, so maybe I'll just call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous. All right. Only one thing left. All those in favor? Any opposed? We are adjourned.